Automated Oracle FLEXCUBE testing with Test Modeler. With Test Modeler, we create a central model of the system that is representative of the target application, with that model becoming the digital twin of the application. In here, we capture critical business logic that must be tested, with human collaborators and machines all contributing and working from this central point of truth. From this model, we can generate test cases, automated test scripts, and rich test data that are ready to be slotted inside an existing testing pipeline. In the case of Oracle FLEXCUBE, we have used the Test Modeler scanner to accelerate the model building process. This has allowed us to capture logic directly from the screens and increase the speed at which we create models. Additionally, utilizing test data automation, we are allocating existing rich data combinations from an Excel spreadsheet into our generated tests. As we build out the logic, we get to the point where the functionality of Oracle FLEXCUBE is represented by its digital twin that exists inside Test Modeler. From our digital twin, we generate optimized test suites, test automation scripts, and rich data combinations, all of which are pushed into an existing testing pipeline via GitHub. The Oracle FLEXCUBE scenario we're going to be testing today first involves a sign-in process, followed by a navigation to a function ID. Then we need to create a new customer in the customer maintenance screen, depending on the type of customer that we want to use. Login and navigation. To get started with creating our models, we have used our Test Modeler scanner to come in and pick up the objects with which we want to interact with during our automation. You'll see as I've picked these up, we can have a look at the identifiers that are then used to drive our automation script creation. We have then used our scanned objects to come in and start to build out this login screen model. So you'll see here, if we're thinking about the username field, there are two user journeys one could go down. They either enter some valid data or some invalid data. And the same with the password, eventually all the way through until we click our sign in button and the required information messages to get us onto the next screen. The next screen is our navigation screen. This is much simpler. It's simply a linear model that will go and click an OK on an information message and enter the required fast path that we need to access our customer creation screens. Customer creation. A key aspect of Test Modeler are the accelerators that we have built into the tool. These will reduce the time it takes to create ourselves a model that can be used to generate automation scripts. We've already looked at one accelerator, which is the scanner. Now we're going to look at a second accelerator. This is the Excel test case importer. So we are provided with this Excel sheet which has a number of test execution steps for each of the different customer types. To utilize this existing asset, we can import this model straight into Test Modeler. So I'm just going to give this our import test and navigate to our test case file. I can also come in and set up the mappings as so and hit import. You'll see when I open up this model we have a linear model that represents the test cases that we see in our sample test case file. I can then use this initial model as a basis to build out our automation for the customer creation screen. Utilizing our scanned objects and the imported Excel file, we have built out this automation focused model. We are going through and entering different data into different automation references based on the data that we had in our sample Excel file. Data allocation. In order to fetch the data that we need for testing, we have set up a little test criteria here that will go into our Excel file and finds the following column names depending on the type of customer that we have set. So in this case, we are looking at the individual customer. So we've set our type in our model here to type individual. This will essentially filter our data so that we only get data back that is, at this point, it can then be pushed into our automation references. So you'll see we have our parameters going in: full name, short name, country, etc., etc. These values are being fetched directly from our Excel and pushed into the automation references. Test execution. Now we have each of our individual models created, we can package these up as sub-processes and bring them all together into one master model, which is essentially an end-to-end customer creation process. Now you'll see we've embedded first our login screen, then our navigation screen. We then have a decision where we can go for any one of 3 of the customer types, and after that decision we can embed our customer creation sub-process, like so. This leaves us with an extensive end-to-end model of our system under test. Now at this point I can come in and start to generate some tests through the system. You'll see for our individual here, we're going through, entering valid usernames, valid passwords, navigating through our screen here, using the individual customer type, and navigating through all the logic that we modeled out previously. At this point, there are a number of things we can do with our model. The first is export our model to Zephyr. I can come in and set up the export, link it to any relevant issues, and you can see what we get is a little link to Zephyr, and inside here we have our test steps along with any step descriptions and expected results. Alternatively, we can also trigger some executions of the test scripts that are going to be generated from this model. To do this, I can click on the automation generation button, open advanced settings. Now before we trigger this process, we need to come in and set up our test data allocation. So I'm just going to come in, select our job, and select our data pool that the data that is in our Excel file is going to be fetched from. I'm also going to come into execution and make sure we have this on and hit execute. What happens now is a 2-step process. To begin with, we're going to prepare and then allocate the test data to the required test. We're going to generate the corresponding test scripts for each of the test cases that we've generated. At the same time, we then trigger the execution, pulling the run results back into Test Modeler.